Cool. You can just leave it on. Sounds okay. Clip in around the 5 or 6 range. We've already offended him. Cool. Hello, everyone. We can probably start things off here, kind of 15 minutes. Usually we like to start things about 15 minutes after the start time so that we can let everyone roll in. So thanks so much for coming. We're going to start with Bitcoin for beginners. So not sure if all of you have heard about Bitcoin or kind of know about Bitcoin, but we're going to dive in pretty deep into why Bitcoin exists and how it works. And really want to make sure we got lots of time for questions after. So if you have questions, mark them down. I'm an open book. I'll give you a bit of intro on myself. I'm Adam. I'm the founder and CEO of Bitcoin Well here. I've been in the space since 2013, found Bitcoin, thought it was a complete joke, put a bunch of effort into disproving it, couldn't disprove it, ended up loving Bitcoin, falling in love with the philosophy and the protocol and everything it stands for, and have pretty much dedicated my life to making Bitcoin accessible. Here at Bitcoin Well, we want to enable independence, and part of independence is knowing and understanding how the money works and how we can own and control our money. So I promise you there's no question you can ask that I haven't been asked before. And if you think one is too offensive, it is also not too offensive, because I have had people call me the most heinous things on planet Earth over the last 10 years. When you sell very disruptive money, people don't like that very much. So please, I encourage you, ask as many questions as you like. We're also live streaming, so if you don't want to be on the camera, don't walk in front of the camera. And if you're online and you're watching, then we've got someone monitoring. Murph is monitoring the comments, so thank you very much. And yeah, we'll ask those as well. So today we're talking about why Bitcoin was created, what Bitcoin is, how it works. We'll talk about how to store Bitcoin safely, how to buy Bitcoin safely, and then as promised, walk into a Q&A. So starting off the bat, we'll look at the dollar, the dollar's purchasing power virtually disappearing over the last 100 years. This is the purchasing power of the US dollar from 1913. So at the top there is $1 of purchasing power when the dollar kind of came into fruition, and down at the bottom there is 2020. Pretty scary. Why Bitcoin was created was for this graphic. I don't think there's any graphic on planet Earth that does a better job explaining why we exist and why Satoshi created Bitcoin. So created in 2009 by a group of people called Satoshi. Satoshi left the scene in 2010. He spent about a year in Bitcoin, about 15 months, actively evolved in the small community back then. No one has heard from them since 2010. There is no CEO of Bitcoin, no board of directors of Bitcoin. There's no profit incentive for some organization behind Bitcoin. And that is what makes Bitcoin so unique compared to every other cryptocurrency or company that you see on the market today. The Bitcoin timeline, I think, tells us another story as to why Bitcoin exists. So we can see here, this is the times from January 3rd, 2009. That was when Bitcoin was, the first Bitcoin block was on January 3rd, 2009. The headline here, Chancellor on the brink of second bailout for banks. We can see right off the bat, right from inception, that Satoshi had a vision for what Bitcoin was going to be, which is a savior to the monetary policy that currently exists. So if we go back to October 3rd, 2008, that was Public Law 110-343, aka banks are getting taxpayer money because they messed up, which is very bad. The white paper for Bitcoin was then published on Halloween, 28 days later in 2008. The Genesis block, the first ever Bitcoin block, was mined January 3rd of 2009. We did our first peer-to-peer transaction in May of 2010. Who can tell me what was this peer-to-peer transaction? What was the very first Bitcoin transaction? Not you, you know. Does anyone know what the very first Bitcoin transaction was? The pizza, that's right. That's right. So someone in the UK bought New York pizza from a Papa John's on May 22nd, 2010. Does anyone know how many Bitcoin that 2 pepperoni pizza? Okay, go ahead. 10,000 Bitcoin for 2 pizzas in 2010, not 13 years ago. Isn't that crazy to think how deflationary money works and how we should really think about how we're spending it? But that was the first really proof of concept that Bitcoin can work. This idea that money for the first time in over a century actually moved hands, and for the first time ever digitally, money moved hands without anyone in the middle. There's no PayPal, there's no bank, no Interac, no Visa. It was money going from person A to person B over the internet, over the Atlantic Ocean in a matter of seconds to buy 2 pizzas. The pizzas, I actually don't know if the pizzas were delivered. It'd be pretty horrible. It'd be cold at best, I think. I've eaten my fair share of cold pizza, and I don't mind it. But anyways, not 10 months later, on February 9th, 2011, it hit dollar parity. 1 Bitcoin was worth $1 US. So think about that. Someone bought $40 worth of pizza for 10,000 Bitcoins. Then 9 months later, it was worth $1. Pretty crazy. It was $100 per Bitcoin on March 2013, $1,000 per Bitcoin November of 2013. The US government then auctioned off nearly 30,000 Bitcoin in June of 2014. And on September 7th, 2021, Bitcoin was declared legal tender in El Salvador. What a ride. From, hey, the banks are getting bailed out, this is ridiculous, to third world countries declaring it legal tender in less than 13, 14 years. Pretty amazing. So first, before we dive into what is Bitcoin, I wanted to understand what money is. And I think we need a grasp and understanding of money. I think if we went on the street right now, we talk to people, we ask them what money is, they'd pull out probably a plastic credit card and they'd say, oh, it's this, it's whatever it is in my bank account, right? Some of you might have I think I've got some coins here. Look at this, a quarter. This might be money. But if we think about what money is, it's simply a representation of energy. Money is, at its root form, a way to reference our time, or more importantly, the energy we spend and the way that we trade our time for money. So when you think about the purpose of money, if we wanted to, we could work until the day we died. We could trade our services for other goods and services, and we would have no need for that middleman, for that money in the middle. If I was a really, really good hairdresser, then I could cut hair. Maybe I'd buy a house and trade a lot of haircuts for a house. I get a side of beef. I'd be all good. But the second you want to do something else with your money, you need to have it stored in a unit of account. And that's why money was created. At the very, very ancient 500-600 years ago, we used gemstones. We used a centralized unit of account in order to trade our time for. We received that unit once the time was traded, and then we could use it in the open market. Over time, though, we've gone away from this money being backed by our energy. We've gone away from money being a direct representation of the GDP or of the collection of our efforts. So enter Bitcoin. Bitcoin aims to solve all of that. Bitcoin, which is backed by energy, aims to be a perfect representation for your time. Everyone in this room, your time, your effort gets more valuable as you get older. That's just basic facts, right? We get smarter, we have more life experience, we understand more, we can do more. Therefore, our time gets more valuable the more that we lean on. Bitcoin aims to do that with these 6 key properties. A store of value, it's a peer-to-peer digital network, it's permissionless, decentralized, transparent, and escapes inflation. Some call that deflationary. So today, I want to look at, these are all the traits of money. You can see lots of them on this. We'll go through that traits of money in a little bit. I do want to single out a couple of these purposes for what Bitcoin is, mainly the permissionless and the deflationary aspect. The permissionless is so important. If your time is permissionless, no one can tell you how to spend your time. No one can tell you what you should or shouldn't be doing with your time. And no one, most importantly, can tell you what you can trade your time for money. Right? If you decide that you're going to be an astronaut, you can go and be an astronaut. This is the basis of North America. You can call it the American dream. We have this incredible luxury of being able to trade our time for services for whatever we want to be doing. And our money currently doesn't reflect that. Our money is currently trapped in a fiat ecosystem where other individuals have the ability to tell us what we can and cannot spend our money on. I personally have examples of this. I am banned from every single bank in Canada. I'm banned from all but 2 credit unions in Alberta. I have no checking account simply because I work in the Bitcoin industry. Now, it's fairly legal. It's extremely legal. It's actually the most legal thing you can do to work for a publicly traded, regulated Bitcoin company. However, the banks don't like it, and therefore I don't have the luxury, because the fiat system is a permissioned system. Exclusive. Do as I say, or you're not invited. And that's problematic. That means that I don't have luxury of buying a house. I'm not sure if you've noticed, you can't buy a house with cash. Dollar bills are not accepted in the real estate world. You can't buy a car with cash. Dollar bills are not accepted at car dealerships. Well, they are, but they have to go through the police for 25 days first, which is very scary. So all that to say, permissionless money is so important. And Bitcoin, one of its truest and purest properties is that it is permissionless. And then deflationary. What does that mean? Being deflationary is the concept that as time goes on, the money gets more valuable. This is the opposite of an inflationary environment, which is what we currently live in right now. The way that Bitcoin is deflationary is the mining protocol and the way that the blocks of Bitcoin are released into the market. And we'll talk about that in the future or throughout the presentation as well. I want to compare Bitcoin, gold, and fiat. I didn't make this chart. This is from Dan Held. He founded or was an early executive at Kraken. I don't think he was the founder of Kraken, but he worked at Kraken. Today he talks about Bitcoin a lot. He's a sharp guy. We can see the traits of money on the left, and we can see Bitcoin, gold, and fiat all compared together. The only red, the only knock for Bitcoin is that it doesn't have an established history. That's it. And I could actually argue that Bitcoin has been centuries in the making, dating back to the encryption protocol that is actually used to govern Bitcoin, was actually invented or came to life as part of the Enigma machine back in World War II. So I would argue that actually Bitcoin does have an established history, but maybe not as a unit of account. So we will put a token red mark in the Bitcoin column. However, everything else looks very, very good from Bitcoin's perspective. I'm not going to dive through each one of these. We don't have the hours and hours that I will rant about all of these traits of money. But if any of you disagree or you'd like some more diving into that, I would encourage you to maybe ask a question later on. Oh, good question. Yeah, fiat. I've been using that term a lot. Fiat currency is the dollar that we know today. The US dollar, Canadian dollar, euro, GBP, Venezuelan bolivar, which is going to cease to exist soon. Fiat currency is government-backed money, government-backed dollars from there. So when we're talking about fiat having low durability, it's literally plastic. You can burn it. It doesn't hold up very well against it. We talk about having an established history. Relatively speaking, fiat currencies only have about a 100-year tenure in the market. When we talk about them being censorship resistant, well, we've all seen how centralized fiat can be. So anyways, all that to say, good question. And let's keep this going. So Bitcoin adoption. What good are all of these traits of money? What good is having a store of value, a permissionless, decentralized protocol that runs money if it is not adopted? Ladies and gentlemen, we are so early in Bitcoin. I know that you hear the news cycles and you see Bitcoin is worth $40,000 and oh my goodness, I'll never be able to own one. And it used to be worth 2 pizzas for $10,000, and it used to be worth $1, it used to be worth $1,000, and now here we are. Bitcoin's trading at $40,000 Canadian. It doesn't matter. The price of Bitcoin is completely irrelevant to the protocol and the token, the store of value that it represents. If you compare this point in time in Bitcoin to the internet, this is effectively like just after the dot-com bubble in 2000, when the internet was declared dead, when the internet was declared a fad. And see here, we've got total internet users and total crypto users kind of on a similar log graph over time. You can see up at the top line there, we are effectively in the same route, in the same era as the internet in like 1997, 1999 era. We are so early. If you think about how much the internet has and continues to grow over the last 20 years, we have the next 20 years for Bitcoin to experience that same parabolic growth and adoption, which is very good. Also, very exciting and kind of in the news, El Salvador, as we talked about, it declared Bitcoin as the legal tender. The president of El Salvador has purchased Bitcoin. Bitcoin has issued a Bitcoin bond. There is now debt on the El Salvador balance sheet backed against Bitcoin, which is absolutely insane. To think 10 years ago, this thing that was barely even existed, and today we have countries issuing bonds against it. They have made it mandatory for all companies in El Salvador to accept Bitcoin, which is pretty cool. And notably, they use the Lightning Network to do so. So that's something that's interesting. We won't be talking about the Lightning Network today, but suffice to say, the Lightning Network is effectively a secondary layer below the Bitcoin protocol that acts like a payment gateway, kind of like the Visa to the dollar. There are over 40 publicly traded companies that hold Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And notably, we went public in 2021, which was very exciting. We were the world's first non-custodial Bitcoin company to go public, which was very cool. So how does it work? There are 4 key aspects to Bitcoin that are locked in the Bitcoin protocol. This is what governs Bitcoin. This is the monetary supply. This is the monetary policy, if you will. Already, we can relate this back to fiat. We know how Bitcoin works. There are economists that have been doing this for 50 years that have no idea how the government prints money. It is completely closed door. Bitcoin is wide open. Anyone can audit it, and we can all look at it. So 4 key pieces: Bitcoin, big B. This is very important. You see big B and little b throughout the presentation. Big B is Bitcoin, the protocol. This is the governing rules that maintain the network. Little b is the token. That's what we all buy. When you're buying Bitcoin, you're buying little b, the token Bitcoin. When you're talking about Bitcoin will save my financial future, Bitcoin will save my family, that's big B, the protocol that will do great things for your financial future. So there's Bitcoin, the protocol. The miners are in charge of bringing Bitcoin into circulation. They're in charge also of maintaining the integrity of the blockchain. The blockchain manages the history. It ensures that the history is visible for everyone to see. And then the nodes verify that the blockchain is accurate and maintains consensus. This means that every single node in the market, every single node on the network understands and knows that we're all in conjunction. We all understand with each other what's there. So the software, how does it work? Basically, it governs a bunch of different things, but I think most important, it governs the fixed supply. It makes sure there will only ever be 21 million total Bitcoin on the blockchain. That's it. There can never, ever be any more. To give you a sense of what that means today, over the last 3 years, our money supply in Canada has tripled over the last 3 years. That can't happen by surprise. That can't happen in the Bitcoin protocol. The protocol dictates 21 million total. It also dictates that there are going to be new Bitcoin mined, a new block of Bitcoin mined every 10 minutes. And then the whole thing is based on public key cryptography. This is a basic, very, very basic public and private key system where you have a public address to receive Bitcoin, and you can only access it with the private key. Very cool. A little bit of info there. Currently, there are 19 million Bitcoin in existence, which is kind of interesting. We are like 90% of the total cap of supply. However, it's deflationary. We'll talk about that in a minute. So miners, what do they do? Miners, as I told you earlier, bring Bitcoin into circulation. They are effectively guessing and checking against a puzzle to get a reward. That reward is a block of Bitcoin. So earlier I said there were 21 million Bitcoin, 19 million total already in existence. How does that work? Well, for the first few years of Bitcoin, a new block, something the miners are constantly fighting over, a new block earned the miners 50 Bitcoin. And then after 4 years, it became 25 Bitcoin. The reward was cut in half. 4 years later, that reward cut in half again, 12.5 Bitcoin. And the block, the reward block, will continue getting cut in half every 4 years, every 210,000 blocks, every 4 years, the mining reward gets cut in half as the supply gets greater and greater and greater. This means the miners spend the same amount of energy, they do the same work, but they only get half the reward. Okay? If you're a hairdresser and you got to cut 5 heads of hair to pay your rent, and then all of a sudden you got to cut 10 heads of hair to pay your rent, you got to charge, or you can charge twice as much, right? This is the function behind Bitcoin. The miners are in charge of what they sell Bitcoin for. If their costs stay the same, but the reward gets cut in half, they're going to charge twice as much for Bitcoin. This is how Bitcoin maintains its price. This is how Bitcoin increases in price against dollar. This is what Bitcoin is, what it means when we say Bitcoin is deflationary. The blockchain. The blockchain is what maintains all of this data. Put very, very simply, the blockchain is just a database. Public databases are not new. Blockchain is not a revolution to Bitcoin. What the major revolution is that it's publicly auditable. The fact that anyone in the world can look at the blockchain, can verify that coins exist on and in the blockchain, and the fact that each and every transaction becomes immutable after the miners confirm it is absolutely what the revolution is. The immutability of the blockchain is because the miners are confirming blocks. So as the miners spend their energy, they're doing two things. They're bringing new Bitcoin into circulation, and at the same time, they're cementing transactions in time. Think of it like a Rubik's Cube. When the bottom layer is solved and a second layer is put on top of it, that second layer is almost guarding the first layer. When the third layer is put on, it's guarding the second and the first layer, and so on and so on. There have been 790,000 blocks confirmed on the Bitcoin blockchain to this day, right? You think your transaction in block 492,612 is safe? Yeah, you have to undo 300,000 Bitcoin blocks just to change that transaction. That is data immutability. That's amazing. All data is irreversible on a blockchain after it's been confirmed. That's amazing. That's the purpose of the blockchain. And then lastly, nodes. This is how you and I can get involved in the Bitcoin ecosystem. We have the ability to run a node. There's actually 3 nodes running in this office right now. All they do is receive a copy of the blockchain and check it against everyone else to make sure it's the same. This is the way that Bitcoin becomes permissionless. This is the way that we don't have to check, or we don't have to trust that the blockchain is real. We can in fact verify that our blockchain is the same as everybody else's. This is incredibly important because it completely removes the trust factor from our money. If I, in this room and on this live stream, said I was giving everyone $1 million the second they left, and then I walked out of here, you guys would all be like, hey, where's my $1 million? And you came after me, we had some legally binding agreement, we signed our names in blood, whatever. You guys couldn't prove that I said that, right? There would be no record that I said we were going to pay. I didn't sign that. That's not my signature, whatever, right? If I publicly said that, distributed that to 10,000 computers around the world, you guys would have a pretty good shot at saying, hey, no, Adam said this, and here's 10,000 copies of the exact thing that he said, right? That makes things very real and very verifiable. So the node's job is to make sure that the blockchain is the same for everyone. That's how we maintain that we don't have to trust, we can verify the blockchain network. Okay, how do you store Bitcoin? Great. We've got these 4 properties. We trust and we understand that Bitcoin is very, very good, but you have to store it. How do you store Bitcoin? There are 2 main ways to store Bitcoin. Back when I got into Bitcoin, there were none of these. There was actually a really sketchy mobile wallet called Blockchain. Blockchain is still around today. And I downloaded it onto my iPhone 4 at the time. And then it got banned from the App Store. And so I couldn't update my phone for like a year and a half, because when I did, my only Bitcoin wallet would go away, which, as you could imagine, as a guy that sold Bitcoin for a living, wasn't very good for business. Today, we're lucky. We've got lots of different options. But mobile wallets and hardware wallets are the 2 main ways to kind of hold and keep Bitcoin. You can go into some intricacies here. We actually did a presentation on what a wallet was earlier. We talked about paper wallets. We talked about brain wallets. There's lots of cool different technologies that exist to make wallets a little bit more special. But for the purpose of today, we'll talk about mobile wallets and hardware wallets. Mobile wallets are on the internet. The wallet in and of itself is just software, and it's best for small amounts. I think about mobile wallet as the money you have in your pocket. If you're comfortable with a couple $100 in your jeans, you're comfortable with a couple $100 of Bitcoin on your mobile wallet. If you're not comfortable with $1 million in your jeans, don't leave $1 million on your phone. One of the common knocks, or at least it was a few years ago, of Bitcoin was that that the second your password was lost, it was gone. And people always reference the story of a kid who threw out his hard drive in like 2011, and it had hundreds or maybe thousands of Bitcoin worth like 50, 60 million bucks on it. And people ask me like, oh, how could it be safe if you can just lose $50 million? And my response to that has been and always will be, the best way not to lose $50 million is to not throw out your hard drive with $50 million on it. Keep it safe. It's on us. It's up to us how we store our coins. Hot wallets are meant for small amounts. They're connected to your phone. They're generally not the safest way to do it, but they're very, very convenient, and they're fine to use if you find the right one. Hardware wallets, on the other hand, are pieces of hardware, basically a USB stick that is not connected to the internet. The hardware wallet is typically connected in conjunction with a piece of software, and you use the hardware wallet to sign a transaction, or to basically prove that you own that transaction or that you own that wallet, and you interact with your Bitcoin through the software. This is the safest option. This is the best option. People call this cold storage often. This is the best place to save your stack. So if you have your hot wallet, which is good for spending, you have your cold wallet, which is good for saving your stack. This is where your dollar cost averages should go. This is where the Bitcoin that you buy that are intended for the future should be held. This is a Bitcoin address, a bunch of numbers. You and I have no idea who owns this address. We have no clue how many Bitcoin are in it, but we can check. And this is the exciting part about Bitcoin, is that they are what's called pseudo-anonymous. So they're often represented by a QR code such as this, and the actual address itself is not something you can say, not something you can remember, and not something you can type out. This is why QR codes are so important. The absolute best practice for using a Bitcoin address is always copy paste. Never try to like BC1QNA. That doesn't work very well. The other best practice is, after you've copied and pasted, is to verify the first 6 and the last 6 alphanumeric on either end. The reason this is so long and this is so big is because there is virtually, with this way, an infinite amount of Bitcoin addresses that could exist on the market. I personally have probably used hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin addresses. You are not stuck with one and one forever. In fact, by default, any Bitcoin wallet that you open, either a mobile wallet or a cold wallet, will assign you 250 Bitcoin addresses. It is an insane amount of Bitcoin addresses in circulation. And actually, I saw a stat recently that there are over 1 million Bitcoin addresses that hold at least one Bitcoin, which is a pretty cool stat that we can all publicly see, because all Bitcoin addresses are public. The key is we don't know who owns the Bitcoin. Okay, we're almost there. Public and private keys. As I told you way earlier, Bitcoin is based on cryptography. Where was that slide? Right there, based on public key cryptography. Finally, we're getting to some public and private key conversations. Public keys are basically like email addresses. This is effectively a public key. This is a public address you can display, you can show to absolutely anybody, and anyone that has it can send you Bitcoin. If you want to email me, you email me at adam@bitcoinworld.com. That's my public address to receive communications, right? The SMTP, or the email protocol, knows that adam@bitcoinwell will send communications to me. The Bitcoin protocol knows that the public key, BC1QNA, blah, 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 is the place to send money. However, you cannot access those emails. You cannot access the Bitcoin inside the wallet unless you have the private key. This is effectively the password to prove that you own that address. This grants you access to the funds on the blockchain. So you have a public key, something you share with everyone, and a private key, something you share with nobody. A seed. A seed is the layer just above the private key. A seed is how you gain access to all of your private keys inside of a wallet. A seed is a list of words, 12 or 24 words, and recently there's been a 25th word that was optionally added, which helps you recover your wallet. So typically, if you have a wallet of a public and a private key, the backup phrase is a term you might hear, is the seed. If you lose your phone that has your public and private key on it, you lose your phone that has your mobile wallet on it, but you have your recovery seed, which is 12 or 24 words, you can download a wallet on a different device, import or simply type in the 24-word seed phrase, and all the transactions, all the addresses, and all the private keys will be right there on that address. It's effectively a clone of your wallet. It's so important that your seed is kept safe. It's so important that it's kept away from your wallet. If you were to lose your seed, nothing bad happens. But If you were to lose your seed and lose your wallet, you're hooped. You're completely hooped, and you have no way to recover those Bitcoin. You have to keep your seed safe. Seed phrases. When I made my first seed phrase, I used dice to make a wallet. So you can use dice to create a bunch of randomness, and you can write down a string of numbers. And I bought the most high-end paper I could find. I bought a brand new dedicated printer that I was going to keep offline forever, special ink, and I wrote this the seed phrase, printed it on this crazy ink and crazy paper, laminated it, and cut it up into multiple different pieces and put it elsewhere. It was absolutely insane. Thought I was being very smart and very, very cute. Needless to say, regardless of all that, it was still able to be burnt by fire. And luckily it didn't burn. The wallet's fine. But if you can, and there actually are products on the market today where you can stamp your seed in metal. That keeps it like fireproof, explosion proof. You can do some craziness. I think we even have some metal seed plates here at the office that you can purchase. And yeah, you can stamp your seed in metal. This is you want to keep your seed on some kind of indestructible material. Okay, now I get to shill for a minute. Where do you buy Bitcoin? If you're convinced that this protocol, you're convinced that the protocol that designates the miners which are held true by the blockchain, and the nodes which keep the blockchain in check, if you're convinced of all that, you understand how to store Bitcoin, you understand public and private keys. A public key is something you give out. A private key is something you keep safe. You're comfortable backing up your seed phrase. You're ready to buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin, well, this is what we do. We make it easy to buy, sell, and use Bitcoin. You do that at a Bitcoin ATM. There's 280 of our ATMs across Canada. You do it online at bitcoinwell.com/join. You can buy Bitcoin with Visa Debit, Interac e-transfer, or wire transfer. We are the fastest and safest place to buy Bitcoin. You can go directly from your bank to Bitcoin in less than 30 seconds. My record was 19 seconds where I clicked send on the e-transfer and Bitcoin was on the blockchain in my wallet 19 seconds later. It's truly super, super proud of the team that built this. It's absolutely amazing how fast you can go from bank to Bitcoin. However, how often and when do you buy Bitcoin? I've been doing this for 10 years. I have been buying Bitcoin every 2 weeks for 10 years. I am very, very happy that I have been buying Bitcoin every 2 weeks for 10 years because it completely removes the emotion from buying Bitcoin, and it removes the ability or the thought process that you can time the market. I have bought Bitcoin at the top and I have bought Bitcoin at the low. My first Bitcoin that I bought was $100, and I've also bought Bitcoin at $80,000 and at every price range in between. It truly doesn't matter. Bitcoin is something to store our value, to store the time, to store the value that we create with our time and send it into the future. There is no price too expensive to take permissionless, decentralized, self-controlled money, self-custodied money, and transport that into the future. Obviously, we would all like more Bitcoin. And the only way to guarantee that you will have more Bitcoin in the future is to buy it frequently and in small amounts. This is the best strategy to purchasing Bitcoin, is to set your savings target, right? 10% of your income, 2% of your income, 80% of your income, whatever it may be. What do you want to be saving? What do you want to be in control of for the future? And that's what you buy Bitcoin. You're not timing the market. You're not waiting for some teacup handle. You're not waiting for some monkey to tell you technical analysis on how Bitcoin is going to respond because of the inflation rates and the interest rates and whatever the Fed's going to do and what some government official in Europe's doing and how China is going to ban Bitcoin. None of that matters. It is simply about taking your savings target and buying Bitcoin accordingly. It really is completely irrelevant what the price is when you have a low time preference, long enough view into the future. Some may say that time in the market is better than timing the market. None of you are smart enough to time the market. There's nobody smart enough to time the market. We just have to put our time in. We have to have time in the market. Price is irrelevant. Lastly, I want to talk about custody or custodial platforms versus non-custodial or self-custody platforms. Earlier, I told you way back here that Bitcoin was decentralized, transparent, and permissionless. Those three virtues go away. They completely disappear when you use a custodial platform. Custodial platforms are platforms that take your money and sell you Bitcoin. They give you price exposure to Bitcoin, but they do not give you the Bitcoin. These are platforms like, I heard it, FTX is a custodial platform. Coinbase is a custodial platform. PayPal, Wealthsimple, your bank are all custodians of your money. They may be regulated, they may be unregulated. At the end of the day, they have all the cards. They have all the keys. They completely own and control the Bitcoin that you have on their platforms. At any given time, they can pull shoot. At any given time, they can send your Bitcoin somewhere else. And at any given time, you are exposed to the decisions of the people in charge of those Bitcoin. I'll give you an example of a company. Keep your question. I'm excited for the question. Keep it. There's a company called, I believe it's called Block, and they offer Bitcoin rewards and financial products like lending and other things like that. And they had a $700 earnout to pay, or they had a reward to pay out to their customers, $700. And the guy in charge of making those payments went to work on a Tuesday afternoon, like we all do. I don't know if he was hungover or sleeping or what he was, but he sent 700 Bitcoin, not $700 to the people, right? Happy surprise for the few number of people that got the extra Bitcoin. Not so happy for the investors and other customers that didn't get it, right? You can have all the processes, all the regulations, doesn't matter. It doesn't solve stupidity. When you leave your coins in someone else's hands, you are exposed to the stupidity of whoever is handling those coins. That's very, very dangerous. So what is self-custody, non-custodial? These are platforms that immediately deliver you the Bitcoin the second you buy them, right? I told you I went from bank to Bitcoin on the blockchain in 19 seconds. That's only because of a non-custodial platform. There's no safer way to buy Bitcoin. In fact, there's no other way to buy real Bitcoin. When you simply hold price exposure, when you hold Bitcoin on someone else's wallet in someone else's database, those aren't real. Those don't actually hit the blockchain. When you transfer that money, there's no blockchain record that actually occurs. It's fake. It's not real. We're trading fake fiat, fake money for fake Bitcoin. That's not good enough. The reason we buy Bitcoin, sure, is for price exposure. But the most important virtue of Bitcoin is the fact that we have censorship-resistant self-custody money. When you hold your money yourself, you are absolutely in complete control. So to quickly recap, not your keys, not your coins. Doesn't matter if it's your money that bought them. If you don't have the keys to the Bitcoin, you don't own them. Custody is 9/10 of the law. We learned this from day one. That's not new to Bitcoin. Very, very important. You don't need to buy a whole Bitcoin. You can buy 0.0000001 Bitcoin. In fact, I will show you how to do that in a minute. I have a, where'd that thing go? Is it up? Oh, okay. I have a little lightning ATM. You can buy like 25 cents of Bitcoin, which is very, very cool. Bitcoin is more savings than it is an investment. Bitcoin's a savings plan. It's best to buy Bitcoin frequently. Time in the market is better than timing the market. Hardware wallets are the best way to store Bitcoin. Ooh, we got a typo here. Little b Bitcoin is what that should be, the token. And you always want to buy hardware wallets directly from a manufacturer or authorized reseller. So all that to say, we can continue some education. Actually, I'll play this video. This is the Bitcoin Academy. This is an online education curriculum that we developed in partnership with Athabasca University. It's a 6-module curriculum, completely free. You can go to bitcoinworld.com/academy to sign up. We have a glossary of Bitcoin terms. We've got a bunch of different, like the history of Bitcoin, the history of money, how to keep Bitcoin safe, basically what we talked about in this presentation. So we'll watch this quick, and then we'll answer some questions.
Financial freedom means something different to everyone. We designed Bitcoin Academy to explain how and why Bitcoin works in your everyday life. The examples are real, the case studies relatable, And most importantly, the curriculum was created to improve your understanding of digital assets and inform you of the differences between Bitcoin and fiat currencies. We don't typically think of money as technology, but it is. And this curriculum will teach you how Bitcoin is the next step in that monetary evolution. I'm Adam O'Brien. I founded the world's first publicly traded Bitcoin ATM company, and the Bitcoin Academy is offering you the opportunity to learn how to become financially sovereign.
Okay. And I believe that is it. So thank you guys very much. Please ask as many questions as you like. Do you have a question? Good.
My wife asked me a question today. She said, "What's Bitcoin backed by?"
Energy. Yeah, great question. What is Bitcoin backed by? I can't hold it. It's garbage. No, Bitcoin is backed by the energy in which it takes to consume it, or it takes to produce it, sorry. So like our time, we trade our time for value, right? We all go to work. We all spend time learning things. We all spend either our brain power, machine power, or some other form of power to extract value from the world. Bitcoin is no different. There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of miners that spend energy every single day simply trying to get Bitcoin. The Bitcoin that comes out of that every 10 minutes is effectively valued at the sum of all of the energy that was trying to earn that Bitcoin. So if I spent 1 megawatt of power to earn 1 Bitcoin is the equivalent of 1 megawatt of power. What's a megawatt of power worth? Well, we can, like, that's super easy to value, right? It's like whatever the local power rates are delivered to your house is what 1 megawatt of power is worth. What can you earn with 1 megawatt of power? How much pot can you grow with 1 megawatt of power for lights? How far can you travel with 1 megawatt of power in your electric vehicle? 1 Bitcoin is worth the sum of all of the energy required to produce it. Good question. 100%, man. Yeah, proof of stake is the fiat economy. We already live in a proof of stake world. I mean, the governments like proof of stake because he who owns all the money controls all the money. Bitcoin is the complete opposite. Bitcoin is decentralized and permissionless simply because we have energy backing the asset. Yeah, big time. It's just energy moving all around the world. Bitcoin is just stored energy. We look at gold and people often refer back to gold as having some kind of tangible value. Who here in the room knows how much gold is actually used for like electronics and things? So the amount of gold produced in the world every single year, less than 7% of it is actually used for like building and electronics. People always fall back on that argument. I have gold because it's valued, it's backed. What's it backed by? Well, you can use it. Gold is very useful. Well, 7% of it is. So gold has a 7% value of its total market cap. Good for you. They said, well, you can wear it too. Some guy and I were debating on the radio. And he said, I can wear gold. Well, that makes it valuable. I said, well, I can wear a string of dandelions around my neck. It doesn't make dandelions valuable. This concept that gold is valuable simply because our grandparents said it was is ridiculous. Gold is valuable because it requires energy to produce it. You need to buy a mountain. You need to buy a ton of land. You then have to buy machinery. You then have to run the machinery. You then have to process the gold. You then have to refine the gold. There's a ton of energy that goes into producing gold, and that is what gives gold its value. With Bitcoin, it's the exact same thing. You have an algorithm that demands energy and spits out tokens. It's like an old arcade game. It's so simple. And we have the ability to capture that energy with the Bitcoin token. Great question by your wife. Your wife's a very smart lady. Yeah, we didn't cover any of that.
I don't know if this kind of beginner thing, but this is a little bit.
Yeah, no, great question. So the construct of a Bitcoin transaction, simply put, is the ability for me to give you my public address and you to send me your Bitcoin. What happens behind, so what we do is we'd have a mobile wallet. You'd copy paste my public address, pick the amount of Bitcoin to send, and then hit send, and voila, it magically shows up in my wallet. But behind the scenes, what's happening is my wallet checks with the blockchain just to make sure that I actually have the Bitcoin to send it. Once there's confirmation and once the wallet understands that the Bitcoin are actually there, it sends the transaction to the other one, and that creates a TX ID. So the transaction ID is the record or the receipt of Bitcoin leaving one wallet and going to the other. That TX ID is lodged in the blockchain. That lodging in the blockchain ensures there's a public verifiable stamped record of Bitcoin leaving one wallet and going to the other. And then as that Bitcoin moves on, we can continue to see the string of TX IDs that occurs down the line, which is very, very cool. There's a bunch more intricacies with Bitcoin transaction. We get into change addresses. We get into different types of UTXOs. We get into partially signed Bitcoin transactions, which is actually a way to future-proof your money. You can actually make a transaction today and not broadcast it, not sign it, and that's how you might have a bet with your buddy. If you and your buddy are going to bet 1 Bitcoin on the Super Bowl next year, will this group win the Stanley Cup or whatever? You could actually make that transaction right now. You could not sign it, you could not broadcast it, and you would each have a copy of that transaction, which is pretty cool. There's a bunch of different ways to manipulate the Bitcoin transactions in order to use it for what you want it to do for. Bitcoin is effectively programmable money, and there's no limit to what we can do with the Bitcoin protocol, which is very cool. Yeah, miners actually don't even use GPUs anymore because it's so specialized. Mining is the function of trying to solve a puzzle. There's a great game called Shamory. It's a card game. I recommend you buy it online. My 6-year-old son and I were playing it over the weekend. It's not a difficult game to learn, but it does such a good job of illustrating how mining works and what mining is. Effectively, the construct of mining is having the ability to, solve a puzzle, solve a block, and receive Bitcoin. And so the reason you would want to solve that block is because there are Bitcoin in the block that give it that reward you financially for doing so. The reason you need so much power to do it is because the protocol designates how hard it is to get that puzzle block. So if you and I were just sitting here, we were the only ones mining Bitcoin, it would be relatively simple for either you or I. We'd be almost guaranteed that one of us was going to get that block because the puzzle wouldn't be very hard. But because there are so many people mining Bitcoin, the algorithm actually gets harder the more people that mine Bitcoin. This is called a difficulty adjustment. So every 2016 blocks, the algorithm looks back over the history and it says, hey, was a block mined every 10 minutes or was it faster or was it slower? If there's a block or if too many blocks are mined in that period of time, then the algorithm is going to say, okay, the algorithm must be harder. I have to get tougher because there's not enough power attacking the algorithm. It's too easy to find Bitcoin. And therefore, the required power decreases. But if the opposite happens, if there's lots of people mining Bitcoin, which is what's been happening over the last 10, 15 years, when lots of people are mining Bitcoin, the algorithm designates that it requires more and more power. So if your GPU threw off 1 GPU's worth of algorithm solving power, but today it's 1,000 times harder to solve that algorithm, you need 1,000 GPUs just to maintain your solvability probability in there. And so today we have ASICs, which stands for something special. Does anyone know what ASIC stands for? Application specific, something computer. Yeah, something specific and maybe not special. But the ASICs are designed specifically to attack the mining protocol or to solve the mining protocol and receive Bitcoin every 10 minutes. And each and every year, the ASICs get more and more specialized, get more and more efficient, which puts more and more power onto the Bitcoin blockchain, which then makes the algorithm harder and harder to solve. It's this perfect storm of Bitcoin gets stronger and stronger and stronger the bigger and bigger and bigger it gets. You can compare that to government, which gets weaker and weaker and weaker the bigger and bigger and bloated it gets. Bitcoin actually gets stronger the more computers, the more hash power, which is the power of a miner is called hash. The hash power on the network designates and dictates how strong it is. Yeah, so the Bitcoin protocol makes the blocks. All of the blocks are already there, right? No Bitcoin actually get created when the block is found. Bitcoin simply get distributed. So Satoshi, when he wrote the code, when he wrote the protocol for Bitcoin, he said there's 21 million Bitcoin. There's a designated, there's 50 Bitcoin in these 10,000 or 210,000 blocks. There's 25 Bitcoin in block 210,001 through to 420,000. There's 25 Bitcoin, and so on and so on and so on. And we just tick our way down the algorithm log, releasing Bitcoin that Satoshi predetermined would be in those blocks. So we can actually see, like, I can tell you how many Bitcoin will be released in block, whatever, 16,412. We can tell you exactly down to the Satoshi how many Bitcoin are going to be in that block. So there's 19 million Bitcoin in circulation. We can actually, yeah. So we can actually see, so right now, we're on blocks. So block number 798,588 just got solved. There was 3,390 transactions in that block that went through. We can see the average fee or the median fee was 84 cents paid. The total subsidy, so total block reward was 6.25. So the miner that mined that block got 6.25 Bitcoin plus 0.223 fees for mining, which each transaction includes a small fee to the miners, an average of about 84 cents right now to that. So that miner spent some energy and got $203,625 worth of Bitcoin, or 6.473 Bitcoin. And here are all of the transactions that are in that block. We can see every single transaction that occurred in that block. Pretty amazing. And we can see, we can do this like 790,000 times, which is Genesis block, baby. We can see the inscription. It's right there. It's absolutely remarkable the way that the auditability of the Bitcoin blockchain is wide open for us to access for free. Do you know how long it would take me to go to a bank and ask for the transaction that happened like 6 weeks ago? I'm dealing with this right now at my bank. 4 months ago, I told you I don't have a bank. Luckily for me, my wife has a bank and she has a line of credit. I was paying the line of credit. I paid the wrong one. So a bunch of money went to the wrong line of credit. And for the last over a month and a half, we've been trying to find the transaction and then get that transaction moved to the right spot. It's absolutely ludicrous. Versus here, we've got a unique identifier for the block. We can just simply look at the transaction and off we go. That's true. That's true. The Bitcoin once spent are gone. Possession is 9/10. Custody is 9/10 of the law. Exactly. Yeah, great questions. The blockchain is oh, look at that. Block just went through. Block number 798,590 was just mined. There's only 1,579 transactions in there. And median fee was 38 cents. And look at that, only 0.95 fees. This is super interesting. So check this out. Huge difference. Look at this. 6 minutes ago, there was a block. 2 minutes ago, there was a block. And 1 minute ago, there was a block. This is because there's too much power on the algorithm, and the algorithm isn't difficult enough. So when there's a difficulty adjustment, the difficulty is going to get a lot more difficult. Yeah, I think the difficulty adjustment was it yesterday or Monday? Yeah. So yeah, every 2016 blocks is when the algorithm just kind of looks at the difficulty and says, we should make this more difficult or not. But we can see right now, like, you're supposed to have basically 6 blocks an hour. And in the last hour, we've had 10 in the last hour. So it's far too easy to mine Bitcoin right now, which is a good thing for miners. But we can see here, total fees, these miners are just getting the block subsidy. They're getting basically no fees as a result. Compared to like a few months ago when ordinals, like when the blockchain was absolutely crazy, there was almost more Bitcoin in fees paid than there was Bitcoin. And that's actually going to be the reality in like 100 years. In 100 years, there will be more Bitcoin paid in fees to miners than in block subsidy, because the block subsidy will be so low. Like I'm talking 0.000125 Bitcoin per block. What they're earning 6.25 right now. It will be fractions of fractions of fractions of Bitcoin in the future. Bitcoin. Yeah. That's just an arbitrary dollar amount based on current trading volume or based on current trading price. So if you have this Bitcoin, you go to bitcoinwell.com/join and make an account, and you can sell Bitcoin and receive an e-transfer, a wire transfer, or cash. And that's like, this is where. No, the miner inherently has part of the mining protocol. The miner would have a wallet to get paid out to. Yeah. But this is where like companies like ours are designed to help you interact with the Bitcoin protocol, right? The Bitcoin protocol tells you how many Bitcoin you have, but that has no application in the real world. And so there's multiple different companies, just like Google and Zoho and Apple Mail. They help you interact with the email protocol, SMTP. They give you a way to access email within the protocol. Bitcoin Well and other companies give you the ability to access Bitcoin within the blockchain. And so companies like ours are designed to help you go from fiat to Bitcoin and from Bitcoin to fiat. There are other companies that are helping people accept Bitcoin in their retail stores as a small business owner. So you can spend them natively there. We actually set up a Bitcoin machine in Saskatoon like almost 10 years ago in a little coffee shop. And I asked them, hey, do you want to accept Bitcoin? And he was like, sure. So we accepted Bitcoin. I think I was probably the only one that bought stuff with Bitcoin there at first. But over the next couple of years, he amassed like 3 or 4 Bitcoin just from selling coffee and muffins in 2014 and 2015. I promise you, it was not because hundreds of thousands of dollars were being spent on coffee and muffins. It was just that was the price of Bitcoin at the time. I know someone that spent in one summer over 6 Bitcoin on chai at Remedy Cafe. Not because he had hundreds of thousands of dollars of chai, but just because that was the summer, or that was the price of Bitcoin that summer, and we were spending Bitcoin for chai. That's just the way it works. And so the key point to being in Bitcoin is understanding how you can access the real world with your Bitcoin. And the best way to do it is peer-to-peer, right? Bitcoin is you have the ability to buy pizza from London in New York. You have the ability to go peer-to-peer, but it's difficult to do. And until we see mass adoption, It's my understanding. It's my expectation that you're better off using your credit card and paying that credit card off with Bitcoin than, like, we are decades away from spending Bitcoin on a Big Mac. I just don't see it happening anytime soon. That's right. Yeah. So the way, that's actually how I like do a lot of my transactions is I have an Amex card that I spend, that's how I buy coffee and gas and whatever. And then I pay that Amex card off with Bitcoin Well. It's a good question. So every time you sell Bitcoin or use Bitcoin, that's a taxable event. And so when you buy Bitcoin, it's nice to track the price at which you bought Bitcoin. And then when you sell or use that Bitcoin, it's nice to track the price that you sold that Bitcoin at. And then at the end of the year, you give a mess of papers to your accountant, pay them a bunch of money. They tell you how much you owe the government. The government either says yes or no, and then you do that whole transaction. How do you mean? That's right. Well, it's at Bitcoin Well. Yeah. So like when I use my credit card at the store, there's no Bitcoin transaction happening there. It's just I then owe Amex money. And then when I pay Amex through Bitcoin Well with my Bitcoin, that's when the taxable event occurs. Yeah. So they're always around that, though, interestingly, because our current tax laws do not include loans. You can get a loan against your Bitcoin and then use that money to live or to buy things. The problem with that, though, there's massive risks to that. If the price of Bitcoin falls, you'll lose all your Bitcoin. If the person that you give your Bitcoin to for the loan disappear, you'll lose all your Bitcoin. And if the government decides they want your Bitcoin, you'll lose all your Bitcoin. So it's not without its risks. But if you don't want to pay taxes, then you could just get a loan against them, and then that would be assuming all the laws are the same, it would be not taxed that way, because debt isn't taxed right now. Your money won't grow; it'll stay, and that's the important distinction. Yeah, no. You have no certainty that it will. The only certainty that you can draw is that Bitcoin will continue to be, Can someone grab the door? Bitcoin will continue to be backed by energy, and that as long as there is more and more energy being contributed to the Bitcoin network, mining, then Bitcoin will continue to grow in value. Bitcoin is like inherently designed to grow against fiat currencies because fiat currencies devalue themselves all on their own. We've watched the Venezuelan bolivar increase like 1,000% or decrease in value like 1,000% over the last little while. And that's not new to our world. We actually I think it was in Ireland in like the 16 or 1700s, the workers would go to the bar after work and they'd order all of their beer at the beginning of the night, because by the end of the night, the beer would be more expensive because the dollar got less valuable as the night went on. Fiat currency devalues itself all on its own. And so when you have an asset that is backed, or not backed, that is valued against the fiat currency, it's just inherent that asset increases in value. What you actually care about is that the Bitcoin increases or maintains your purchasing power. If you buy one Bitcoin and that one Bitcoin costs you $40,000 and $40,000 is 6 months of work, then you want that Bitcoin to maintain 6 months worth of work of purchasing power. If right now $40,000 can buy you like a mediocre Toyota Corolla, then you want to make sure that that Bitcoin can buy you whatever half a month or half a year's of work can buy you at any point in the future. Historically speaking, deflationary money, which of course Bitcoin is, will actually increase your purchasing power over time. So that means that in 100 years, your one Bitcoin that you bought for 6 months' wages today should actually buy you 6 years worth of wages, purchasing power in the future. And that's why we have Bitcoin. We don't actually care about the dollar value because the dollar value is a completely irrelevant and made up depending on the government's feelings at the time. What we care about is what can we buy? What can we consume because of the Bitcoin that we have? The energy. So at the root base, complete baseline M0 level, the total sum of all energy dedicated towards the network divided by the number of Bitcoin that get out in any transaction is what Bitcoin is worth. Now, there's other market factors at play. There's emotion, there's Wall Street and hedge funds and all the other market factors at play there. But at the end of the day, it's basically energy divided by number of coins equals value. Yeah, there's just transaction fees. So Bitcoin is inherently a settlement layer, not a transaction layer. And I mean, we're about 120 years away from all the Bitcoin ever being mined. So barring some crazy science, I probably won't be around to see it. But my kids, maybe my kids, but certainly my grandkids, and definitely my great grandkids will be around to see the last Bitcoin block be mined. It's going to be a monumental event. It's going to be absolutely historic. And when that happens, the mining incentive will decrease dramatically, and it will get very, very expensive to simply send Bitcoin. What people are spending, what is 69 cents was the most recent, price to send a Bitcoin transaction. It'll be $69 to send a Bitcoin transaction, more to send a Bitcoin transaction when there's no Bitcoin. Keep in mind, the Bitcoin miners are used to bringing in 6 Bitcoin per block right now. That being said, by the time the last block is mined, they're going to be bringing in like hundreds of sats. They're not going to be bringing in a bunch of Bitcoin, but it'll be very, very expensive to send Bitcoin. Bitcoin will be held as a settlement layer, and layer 2 transactions like the Lightning Network that I was talking about earlier are what will be driving the transactional layer of Bitcoin. Companies like Bitcoin Well will be designed to help you use the Lightning Network, layer 2 technologies, whatever layer 3 and layer 4 technologies look like at some point in the future. You'll still need companies in the middle, or you'll still want companies in the middle, I think. But at the end of the day, it'll simply be a settlement layer by that time. No, it's not really important. I wouldn't do that. And I'll tell you why. So you don't need to open an account to own Bitcoin. Your Bitcoin wallet should simply be an application that you have that gives you or generates keys. Anything that asks for your email and password will have the ability to be like stolen or phished, is probably the better term, where you would lose access to your Bitcoin. So a wallet that I recommend is called Blue Wallet. They're great. There's no bells and whistles. There's no layer 2 transactions, nothing like that. It's simply a place to store Bitcoin. When you open the app, it asks you if you're going to import a wallet or create a new wallet. You click create a new wallet. It gives you your seed phrase, and that's it. And so, bingo. Yes, exactly. And so when you buy Bitcoin, any reputable site like Bitcoin Well will ask you up at the front of the transaction, where do you want us to send the Bitcoin? So not like before we even think about money, where do you want your Bitcoin sent? you would then take an address from Blue Wallet, copy it, paste it at the platform, and then right away you would have certainty that the platform will send you Bitcoin to that address as soon as the money is paid. Blue Wallet. Yep, exactly. Yeah, Moon's a bit tricky for news, I think. There's lots of... It's getting a little sus because there's some custody stuff involved. Their Lightning stuff's turning out to be not that great. Phoenix is way better. And green. Yeah.
So when you have when you're buying Bitcoin on some platform, like Binance, and then you send it to your wallet, and Bitcoin goes up, as Bitcoin goes up, does that value go to your wallet?
Yeah, so the price of Bitcoin actually is pretty arbitrary. There's no central authority that can tell us what the price of Bitcoin is. And so all it's worth is what you can sell it for. And what that means is the Bitcoin that you have in your wallet are valued at the market price at any given time of whoever will buy it at that price. That's exactly right. Yeah. Yeah, theoretically, certainly. Today, the Bitcoin market cap is about $580 billion. So in order to, you could buy them all up, I guess. They wouldn't get mine. So you'd have a couple less than the total circulating supply. I think lots of early Bitcoiners would probably share that sentiment. Lots of libertarians would probably share that sentiment. And I think it would be very difficult. Moreover, you would need 51% of all the mining power to make any meaningful difference to the mining network or the protocol. And so it's beautiful because it's democratic. If someone was trying to come in and destroy the network, they would need, first of all, they'd need $500 billion to do it. And they'd need the permission of every single Bitcoin holder to give them the money. That's amazing. It means that you can't just come in and swing your dick around because you just don't have the luxury of doing that. There's no one entity or no one individual in charge, no matter how much money you have, that can force you to take your Bitcoin. Somebody comes in and dangles $1 billion in your face, you're going to have a choice to make, right? But at the end of the day, the choice is in the person that holds the Bitcoin. This is back to that custody piece. If your Bitcoin are held at Binance or Coinbase or any other custodial platform, of which most platforms are, and the government says, hey, we're buying all the Bitcoin at fair market value, you have to give us the Bitcoin. The platforms are going to send the Bitcoin over. This is what they're going to do. It's what they did in 1933 with all the gold. It's what they're going to do in 2000, who knows what year, with all the Bitcoin. But they won't get mine because I have full autonomy and full power and full control because I have full custody. Yeah, I think that's actually recently happened. I'm not 100% sure on all the blockchain stats, but I did see recently that the amount of Bitcoin held by individuals, the amount of Bitcoin that wasn't moved in a year, there was more Bitcoin that hadn't moved in a year than Bitcoin that was in constant circulation, which put the hodler level pretty high. I don't know that we can I guess we can give it to a reasonable guess how much Bitcoin is held by exchanges and how much is held by individuals. But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, I don't think. It's hard to see where AI and Bitcoin play right now. I think anything or anyone that tells you they've got some kind of AI Bitcoin platform is probably just a scammer that wants to trick you into trading Bitcoin. Other than trading algorithms, it's difficult to see much utility. Like Bitcoin inherently is very, very simple. It's programmatic money that maintains value over time that you can own and control at the root base layer. I don't know why I need artificial intelligence in that. There's already an algorithm that dictates my address. There's already a protocol that dictates how much Bitcoin will be in supply. And I already have the ability to own it myself. There's not much for AI to do outside of, like I said, like trading and what, sorry? No, AI and speed don't really have much to do with Bitcoin. The speed of Bitcoin is dictated by the miners and how much hash rate or how much power is on the mining network. Yeah. You can, so yeah, anyone can start mining. It's great. Pardon? No. You need a designated machine to dedicate power towards the Bitcoin algorithm. So you would need something plugged into an energy source of somehow. AI in and of itself can't mine Bitcoin. AI could set up a Bitcoin miner, but it would need a human, someone in meat space, to actually connect the energy source to donate effectively or to give to the mining protocol. No, actually, that was so misreported. It frustrates me so bad. None of the Bitcoin were actually frozen. The trucker, or the instance with the truckers, was that the government was able to get in between the companies that were holding the Bitcoin, but the actual Bitcoin that went directly to the individuals were not frozen. You cannot freeze Bitcoin. Hard stop. The government has and will continue to go to platforms and say, don't let this guy transact. The same way the government, hence why you need your own, you need to use a non-custodial Bitcoin wallet. You need to use a non-custodial Bitcoin platform. Yeah, I do not trust Trudeau. You absolutely are exposed to the policies of other people that hold your coins. And so there is nothing the government can do to take the coins that you hold. The coins that you have on ShakePay are 100% exposed to the government. That company or the company that they use to hold the Bitcoin, like anything in between can go wrong. When you trust your coins with somebody else has the power. So getting your coins off of custodial platforms and onto a wallet that you are the sole owner and controller of is so important. Well, then don't put it on a phone, right? You can get a hardware wallet and put it there. You can. We have some that we sell. We're an authorized reseller. You can get them. I recommend for if you're just beginning with, what I would call an insignificant amount of money, whatever that means to you. I recommend an easier to use wallet. Once we start talking about significant amounts of money, I recommend the Cold Card. It's made in Canada. It's completely open source, and it's very, very difficult to use, but very, very secure. Security and convenience are kind of on this opposing spectrum, where the closer you get to security, the further away you get from convenience. And the closer you get to convenience, the further away you get from security. And so wallets find themselves on that spectrum at any given time. The Blue Wallet, the mobile, like the custodial solution, the ShakePay, the Coinbase, the Binance, whatever, it's very convenient, horribly insecure. The Cold Card option is a lot closer to security and not very convenient. My buddy and I set up a Cold Card the other night. It didn't take us too long, I suppose. We kind of rushed it a little bit. I was showing him the benefits of it. It still took us 45 minutes. And by the end of it, he was like, yeah, we're gonna have to do this like 25 more times so I can remember. And it's like, yeah, and we will, and we can. And that's the beauty of it. But yeah, no, the government, like China, for example, has banned Bitcoin I think about 13 times now, which is interesting because in my experience, you only have to ban things once for them to be banned. But when you have control over them, when you don't have control over them, you have to go through the charade of banning them multiple times. Sure. And the beautiful thing about Bitcoin is if the Canadian government today said Bitcoin is illegal, you have to give your Bitcoin to the government. I could write my 12 seed words, my seed phrase, on a napkin, put the napkin in my pocket, and fly to a different country. And the Bitcoin would be with me the whole time. The government would have still no access to them, and I would be completely removed from that asinine government that made that decision. Moreover, you can even make a brain wallet. You can make a phrase or a poem or a song your Bitcoin wallet through a series of cryptography, and you have to understand the Bitcoin protocol a little bit to be able to do that. And you could walk out of the country naked with the Bitcoin just in your head or your don't forget it, right? It's pretty risky. But again, when we're talking about power of Bitcoin, we're talking about the way that it really is outside the control of the government. You start to realize how exposed we are. You can't do that with gold. How are you going to move $1 million of gold if the government made it illegal, right? Why do you think in 1933, May 1st, 1933, the government made it illegal to own gold, and they got 90% of the gold in America was delivered to them simply because they asked, right? Because what else were they going to do? You can't leave the country. You can't just, I mean, actually, we did, contrary to my point here, we just saw a $20 million gold heist out of Toronto Pearson Airport a few months ago, which like blew my, I don't know how you steal, that's like forklift levels of gold. That's a ton of gold. I don't know how they got away with that. But you can't just get up and walk away with assets. And so Bitcoin gives us the ability to do that, which is remarkable. A common joke or meme in the Bitcoin space is boating accidents. Bitcoiners that have lots of Bitcoin that don't want people to know they have lots of Bitcoin will claim that they went on a boat and lost all of their Bitcoin in the boat accident, and they will claim to have no more Bitcoin. So when the government comes looking for their Bitcoin, they'll say, remember that boating accident I had all those years ago? All my Bitcoin were gone. And like, how are you going to prove me otherwise? Cool. Well, that feels like a good drop-off point. Thank you all very much for listening. We don't have any questions online, hey? Cool. Okay. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you all. Thank you. And yeah, we can mingle and hang out for 20 more minutes or so, and then we'll